Hello and welcome. I'm Rebecca Tinas. I'm the market editor at Interior Design, and I'd like to welcome you to Product Tour. This is our series where we get to visit the trends and talk about what's grabbing the industry and also to meet the minds behind the design. So today I'd like to welcome our friends from Metroflor. And I'll start first with Russ Rogue. Russ, you're the president of Metroflor. Welcome. How are you today?
Very good, Rebecca. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Fantastic. And we're also joined by the director of design, Robert Langstaff. Robert, how are you?
I'm fine, Rebecca. How are you? And thank you for including us in this.
Of course. Happy to have you. So I thought we'd start with an overview of Metroflor. I know a little bit about the company. I know that you're over 100 years old, which is amazing. Founded in 1912 and in upstate New York and selling building materials, distributing building materials. So maybe Russ, could you tell us a little bit more about the company? Give us a brief overview.
Sure. So Metroflor Corporation, as you first mentioned, specializes in resilient flooring, particularly LVT luxury vinyl planks and tiles. We are one division of a larger organization that is referred to as HMTX, which really is encompassing a number of divisions, if you will, that sell similar products to different channels. That is resilient products to different channels. The Metroflor division, for which Robert and I are responsible, predominantly focuses on luxury vinyl plank and tile that is sold through independent wholesale distribution throughout the United States. That in turn ends up in either retail or residential business or through contractors or commercially oriented business. We've been around a long time, as you pointed out, the organization, if you will, for over 100 years. We're privately held by a family with the last name Stone. And it's quite a history and quite a legacy that we're proud to be a part of.
Great. Well, typically we would have the pleasure of meeting in person, and likely it would be in Chicago during NeoCon, the trade show for the design industry for contract and commercial interiors. And I wish we were there, but here we are virtual. And I wonder if we were together and we were in your space in the Mart, what would you be introducing this year? What's your new product?
Yeah, we would be focusing, and it is a shame that we're not there to meet one another live and in person. We have enjoyed participating in NeoCon for the past number of years, and it is a shame that we can't do it this year. We would have been focusing on a particular, I guess, product evolution. And if I could maybe take a minute just to explain what I mean by that evolution. About 2 years ago, Metroflor introduced a commercially oriented LVT product line that we called Deja New. And it's a glue-down, dry-back, luxury vinyl plank and tile collection that is, of course, recommended for and designed for commercial applications. We evolved that collection and began to incorporate what I would refer to as a different installation methodology. So rather than the product being glued down, we actually began to adopt a technology incorporating the use of magnets. So it's such that a magnetic underlayment is rolled or laid out on the floor in a loose lay fashion. And then on the back side of our LVT, we incorporate ferrite powder or iron powder. And that allows the product to become compatible with the magnet. It dramatically excels or accelerates, I should say, installation time. There's no need for adhesive. It allows you to install the product over a variety of different subfloor conditions. And it's really just an extremely fast and innovative way to install a product in, as I said, commercial environments. This year at NeoCon, had we been there, we were going to evolve that yet another step further with a program that we're calling Metroforms. And Metroforms is taking those Deja New product line, the SKU assortment that I alluded to earlier. And this may not be the best way to showcase it under the conditions that we're facing today with this video interview, but we're offering a number of different shapes. In this case, this is just a hexagon, but we're offering chevrons and some unique patterns that allows a designer to visualize something that would typically be pretty complex or complicated to install, but now using the technology of pre-cutting these unique shapes, incorporating the ferrite powder on the back that makes it compatible with the magnet. It is simply such that installers can put together, as I said, would be a normally complicated project, but do it in a fraction of the time with great consistency.
I love that. So it's called attraction, correct? The magnetic
Yeah.
component?
So
So
the
that's
magnet,
great technology. So you're able to kind of take something that was a little difficult to install or could take a person a longer time to install and make it more easy.
exactly, exactly.
The shapes are so fantastic. So Robert, I'm guessing you were a key leader in the development of a product like this. How do you guys come up with the shapes and forms? Because as you said, there's some more kind of almost traditional patterns like the chevrons. There's 3 different types of chevrons. The chevron weave is really beautiful. It has almost a kind of parquet look to it when it's installed. It has almost a wood grain pattern on it. But there's also some very modern patterns in the collection as well. Triangle and square is really fun. It has a lot of graphic impact when it's installed. So how, Robert, do you go about kind of deciding what shapes and what's your process like? How do you start a project like this?
Well, it was really interesting. When we realized what the possibilities were, we started playing with different shapes and actually started to get a little bit out of hand, as you can imagine, because there are so many different possibilities that we could work with. But in going through that process, we realized that we really needed to keep it simple, and that's why we ended up selecting 12 different basic shapes. And they are basically geometrics. There are 2 different that kind of creates a basket weave. And the idea obviously was, to make it easier. If you give designers, architects too many choices, it becomes counterproductive. And not only for them, but for us as far as supplying. And the shapes that we have are, like you said, they're very recognizable. They're easy to, really easy to install, which was another consideration. You are correct. The chevron and the herringbone have really become popular. It has always been a traditional floor layout in Europe, but at least 5 years ago, I began seeing it being used in high-end applications in the US, in department stores certainly, and in particular in window displays. I saw a lot of innovative uses. So I began talking with Russ. I think that was in part why we started to look at the different shapes.
It's so nice to hear where you get your
Yes.
inspiration from, because that's, I think, really interesting to people of like how you start a product and how you develop it and where you kind of look to get those ideas. So that's great.
And that's a good point, because oftentimes once a product is introduced, there has already been something that inspired it probably 3 to 5 years before that. There are ideas that I get that I will work on before we go further with it to find out if it's valid. But in addition to the shapes, I think something that's just as important are the designs that we selected. Like Russ said, that the Deja New line is set up for commercial. So it's, we're focusing on retail, hospitality, some office. The patterns that we have selected offer a great way to designate seating areas, wayfinding, very unique, different patterns can be created, in a retail hospitality setting to help direct movement, traffic flow. But the designs that we picked were 3 different wood grains and 3 different, well, 2 stones, 1 abstract, or 2 abstracts. And the idea is that wood grains still are the driving force when it comes to design selections by designers and architects. So we offered a rather rustic coastal oak, which is kind of a palette look. A smooth oak, which is very clean, very kind of upscaled, modern, contemporary look. And then we have the San Marcos, which is an all-purpose, very comfortable and comfortable design. Woods have always been important, I think, to the consumer, whether it's commercial or residential. There's a connection that people have, whether it's the visual or the conceptual. It's a biophilic connection that makes everyone kind of feel comfortable. It's an easily acceptable product, and certainly it's a sustainable one.
Well, there's great neutrals, and I love that there's the layering of the color as well as with the patterning, and like you were saying with the wood grain. But there's also some really bold choices in there. There's
Yes.
poppy, there's the beautiful
Yes.
blue indigo, there's almost an acid green that that I find so beautiful. That one's called kiwi, which is so fun. So you come from a fine arts background. So does that kind of inform your choices when you're looking at colors?
Very much, very much. Color is critical. As much as design, color is critical because that is going to be the first thing that captures one's attention. It's the first thing you see, but seeing what is going on right now is important. We value what is selling. We evaluate what's going on in that particular area. But my responsibility is to see what's coming. And that is where my art background helps me, because I tend to come at it from a slightly different angle, I would think, than possibly other designers, in the sense that I look at a broad range of influences. And again, this goes back to trying to distill down, as I mentioned before, a direction that I feel is important, so that when we come out with designs and colors, we have something that's going to satisfy people that want something now, or they're looking for something new. And we have the right product, right color, right design at the right time.
I want to take it over to Russ to ask a question. Something that Robert mentioned is the ability to use this product as a wayfinding mechanism. I wonder if what's going on with the pandemic and the way that offices will need to be revised in order to make way for more space and better flow among people, if that's something that you've considered, and if this product is something that you would recommend for those situations.
Yeah, I think that's a very intuitive question. Of course, when we developed this product line, and in particular the magnetic capability to install these shapes, it was long before the pandemic dynamic was upon us. So it wasn't something that we could have foreseen. However, it was just interesting. Yesterday, I saw a photograph of one of our offices in the Netherlands, and they had taken the opportunity to put yellow tape and markings on the floor to provide certain distances, of course, with social distancing that we're all now needing to comply with. And it's interesting that you brought this up, because our product line and the ease in which it can be installed and the shapes that we offer, it can in fact maybe create a unique way to accomplish that same objective, that is to mark or annotate locations that have to be kept for social distancing, but maybe do it in a way that is a little more beautiful and a little more attractive, and it doesn't necessarily take away from the installed or the built environment. So it's a very interesting question, and a good one. And it may be something that we have to pursue a little more overtly based on the dynamic that we're all facing these days.
I know that our audience of interior designers and architects are definitely looking to brands to help them in their design process. What kind of tools do you guys offer when designers are looking to make these changes in spaces? Do you have some kind of tool that allows them to kind of create their individualized design plans?
Yeah, I would maybe choose to focus on one new added portal on our website, which can be accessed just simply through metroflorusa.com. And it really ties back into the product that we're spending a fair amount of time discussing today, and that is this Metroflor collection. And it's basically a program called Sketchbox, and it allows a designer to choose any of the 38 colors that we make available in Deja Nu, and pick the shapes that we've discussed, and then configure them into a particular floor layout. And they can change colors, they can change shapes, they can change layouts. But equally important, it's a practical tool, because you can plug in or enter the dimensions of the space you're designing and planning. And the program will actually calculate the number of pieces or shapes that you might need in each style and each color. So we haven't incorporated the wayfinding possibility that you've just brought to our attention today. Maybe that's something for us to look into in the future. But for someone to visualize, how this product line can really be utilized in an environment, I think we have a great tool to accomplish that. There are, of course, some standard room scenes that are loaded on the site. That could be a waiting room in a hospital environment or a retail store, etc. But it also has the capability for a photograph or a scene to be uploaded to the website, and for that board that's been laid out or developed by the designer, it can be plugged into that site or into that room scene, so that that you can visually take that to a client to show them how this product might look in the space that you're planning for.
That's fantastic. I know that designers are looking for ways to make it easy on them because they're speccing so many products. So that's a great opportunity for them to play around on that site.
Sure.
I wonder also if we could maybe talk a bit about sustainability and the company, and are there any programs or certifications that you guys have specifically gone after in order to make your practice more sustainable in recent years?
Yeah, I will touch on that for a moment. And Robert, certainly, if you have anything to share, please feel free to chime in. We're very proud of our sustainability and transparency journey. I guess I'll describe it as that. A few years ago, we hired a woman by the name of Rochelle Routman to be our chief sustainability officer, and we give her a tremendous amount of credit, I think, for helping us really pioneer some sustainability and transparency initiatives that are unique to the industry, and certainly unique to the resilient or luxury vinyl plank and tile industry. A couple of things that I would make note of. We were one of the first, I think, companies to be extremely transparent through the use of a declare label, which is endorsed and affiliated to the International Living Future Institute. And it ultimately is an ingredients listing or label. We're pulling back any veil or curtain so that we can overtly publish to any audience that's interested exactly the ingredients that make up or go into our products. One thing that as I said, I think we were probably one of the first to do, at least in the resilient category. Taking that a step further, also another program affiliated with the ILFI, which is JUST. And JUST is more of a declaration related to social equity, from how employees are treated, their compensation, their benefits, social equity from male, female, and the list goes on. And we first began with certifying the factories in China that make our product, both of whom have been JUST certified, and then now we've just taken that a step further, where our U.S. offices in Connecticut and Georgia have also been endorsed or have gone through the JUST process. So it's, I like to look at it as not just transparency and sustainability initiatives related to the product itself, but more importantly, how it's made, where it's made, and how the people who make it are in fact treated. And it's basically that entire cycle that we're promoting, because we're proud of what it is that we do. And we're fortunate to have an affiliation with ILFI that provides the vehicles with which we can communicate this out to our audiences. So those are some of the things that we've been focusing on.
I think culture is so important these days, so that's great that you're involved in the JUST 2.0 program and its social transparency label, so that's really wonderful. I want to switch it up a little bit so we can talk more about color, because everyone loves color. Robert, what would you say you're seeing coming down the pipeline? Because you're kind of many years out, I'm imagining, in terms of your development. So what kinds of things are inspiring you, and what colorways are you thinking are coming, or what kinds of aesthetics are you looking into?
I think that one of the important areas to look at is wood grains. Colors are going lighter and more natural. I know the gray trend was really popular, still is. It's being used a lot, but it's evolving. And this is the one thing when you start watching color, is that color does change. I mean, a trend will pop and kind of spark the direction. And that's what we've seen with the gray. And but what we're seeing here, especially or more so in the U.S., is the gray is becoming more weathered. You know, it's moving away from a kind of monochromatic gray to something that a wood grain that has a little bit more meaning. Now, the nice thing about this is that it gives the gray, that particular color, more flexibility for the designer. They can use it in a wider range of other textiles, furniture, you know, carpet colors, rather than being monochromatic. I said it's going lighter, and that is something that I am seeing. It's going more natural. A lot of the wood that is coming in the engineered finishes are a lot more natural in color, more in finish, and a little less, fewer knots, some cracks, maybe much finer, and then a clean look. There seems to be a bit of a split now between what we call rustic and the cleaner, more modern, simplistic type look. Other colors, other trends that are coming, I think, is more use of abstracts and mixing abstracts. So let's say you have a base design of a concrete. The other possibility then is to have a match, you know, by simply overprinting this design with a very subtle type motif. The motif in itself then could have a little bit of variation in color to give it, say, an accent effect. And I see a lot of this kind of blending. This actually was probably promoted more by the carpet tile companies and also the ceramic industry. And it's been very effective. It's a very affordable way of creating an interesting floor, especially within a space. Again, it can be used for wayfinding, defining seating areas, many applications. And kind of going back to something that Russ said earlier, you know, about what they're doing in Europe by laying down the tape, that I cannot emphasize how simple it is to use the Metroflor's technology, this magnetic technology, to play with layouts and to do installations. And I think that this is going to free up designers and installers to try a lot of new interesting looks without a great deal of cost.
I'd like to return to that idea of blending a little bit, because that really struck me about this collection, that there's not only a color tone, but there's also a subtle pattern. Some felt almost like a textile weave, some felt
Yes.
concrete-ish, some felt wood grain, as we've discussed. Does that variation, is that something you specifically recommend for a flooring application? And is that helpful at all in terms of maintenance, or it has some bit of hide to it, so it's not so uniform? So if there's any collection of, you know, dirt, dust, that it's like less obvious, or what is the impetus behind that kind of layering that you guys do?
No, that's a good point. That's very observant on your part. The majority of the designs that we develop are intended to help hide, you know, what marring, dirt, maintenance, things of that nature. From a design standpoint, you know, certainly the textiles are something that are used quite a bit. I think the thing that is really great is that designers today are really looking at some very innovative ways of using combinations, whether it's, you know, wood grain on a tile look, a concrete, or a textile. And that was the purpose of designing and offering what we did, is to offer the widest possible range in color and design to the designer in a reasonable size package without becoming overburdened on our part and too many decisions on their part. Yes, I mean, the idea of mixing these, that was the intent, again, that open up some freedom for designers to be able to do some things without, you know, without a lot of complications.
And I just wonder, in terms of the Metroforms, you know, are there certain applications that lend themselves better to some of the patterns, or would you say that it's really just kind of personal preference, or where would you love to see a particular pattern end up?
Well, one of my favorite in the forms is it's what I call the chrysanthemum. It's the starburst pattern, and it has a lot of possibilities. That is the kind of design that you would see in a foyer entryway, where it starts to radiate out, and then from that point on, then you could establish color variations moving in left or right or center direction to direct people visually and from a functional standpoint. I mean, it's really endless. It's going to be certainly up to the imagination of the designer and architects, what they want to do and how they want to do it. The other thing to keep in mind is, since we pulled the majority of the colors and designs from the Déjà Nu collection, let's just say in a multifamily situation, you could create a herringbone pattern in one area and then use the matching plank in another area of the same color. What this does is it adds uniformity to the space, but it also, because a lot of multifamily spaces now are smaller, this will allow it to give the impression that it's actually larger. So, there are some actual functional aesthetic issues or benefits to this, as well as just the pure fact of creating some beautiful designs.
It seems like a really versatile collection, which I think is what everyone's looking for. So I appreciate you guys giving us a little rundown. Is there anything I've missed that you feel like is an important point that we want to make about Metroflor and Déjà Nu and attraction?
I might make one comment, and you kind of spoke to it, Robert, relative to how the designs themselves may be constructed to hide dirt or debris or make care and maintenance easier. There are some other characteristics that are built into the product that also contribute towards these products being very easy to maintain, certainly in commercial environments, and also to not show debris or dirt. And one of them is just the sheen level or gloss level. And we have chosen to use on this collection what we call a super matte, or a very low luster finish on both the wood grain designs as well as the abstracts and stone visuals. And that tends to, in and of itself, hide dirt, dust, debris, and so forth, because you're not taking something that would be dull and transposing it against a glossy floor or something that has shine or vibrancy to it. This way, it just all kind of blends in. So it's just something that helps from a concealing standpoint that might be important for the listeners. And then texture. So every one of our products has a texture on it to one degree or another. There are textures that we refer to in the industry as embossed and registered, which is such that let's say the wood grain embossing or texture that is on the surface of a plank is exactly correlated to the decorative visual that is printed. And it basically creates the appearance of a veneer. It's a very realistic looking texture, certainly we think so. But it's also done in such a fashion where it's not so deep such that it would trap dirt and debris. So there's an art to developing textures that add authenticity and realism, but that are done in such a way where they don't contribute towards making it more difficult to care and maintain for the floor. So those are things that we engineer to the product's performance that are outside of design, but when it's considered in conjunction with design, the result obviously is a beautiful floor. It's easy to maintain and care for for many years.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to thank you both. Thank you for sharing with us Metroflor and giving us an overview of Déjà Nu and especially the fantastic attraction magnetic technology. Very interesting stuff. And so thank you, Russ, and thank you, Robert. And I want to thank our audience too. And until next time, and thank you for tuning in. Be well, everyone.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.